Welcome to Hub City Spokes. We're doing a micro season with the Lubbock Cultural Arts Foundation, and we're talking arts community. And we cannot talk about the arts community without talking about film, and you can't talk about film without talking about it with Paul Hutton. He's an Emmy award-winning filmmaker and producer, and the general manager for Texas Tech Public Media. Thanks for being here.
It's awesome to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I know our audience is probably like me, and they want to know, how did you get into doing producing and filmmaking and all of that? Where did that start?
Yeah, so started at an early age. I think, you talk to most filmmakers and they'll have me and my friends used to make movies when we were kids, and that was pre-digital, and we did it on tape, so post-film but pre-digital, and so we were like VHS tapes. We would make movies, and I had no way to edit at the time. I hadn't figured out how to edit from VHS deck to VHS deck, so we would shoot our films in order, in sequence, and the only thing you could erase was the last scene, and you just had to hit play and record on that VHS recorder, shoot your scene, and then hit pause, and if you liked it, you kept it and went to the next scene, or you had to rewind it and do that scene over again, and that was it.
Gosh,
so you had to do it. So I started there, but I didn't know at that point, oh, I want to be a filmmaker. And then I started to see. So I grew up in New Mexico, and after Saturday Night Live, syndicated on the NBC channel, was Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel at the movies. And my dad sometimes would fall asleep. Usually he'd put us to bed after the cold open, and sometimes he'd fall asleep and we'd get to watch Saturday Night Live, and then afterwards, Siskel and Ebert at the movies. And it was the first time I'd ever heard people discuss film on the level of the cinematography, the acting, or, oh, that movie could have been better if it was edited better, or, oh, if the lighting looked like this, it could be. And so it was the first time that movies had been sort of dissected for me in a way that broke them down to their elements, and I was just fascinated by that. And so really it was growing up with that and then making my own movies that I just thought, man, this is really something I want to do. And I never had any aspirations to be a star, be an actor or anything. I was just so fascinated with the mechanizations of making movies. And so it's been something that's been inside of me my whole life, but there wasn't ever just one moment. It's the culmination of many, many moments in my life that it was okay, this is what I want to do. And then in college, my degree was in television and film production. And after I graduated from Eastern New Mexico University, go Greyhounds, I also have a degree from Texas Tech, so
hey, there you
go Raiders too. But I went up to Santa Fe, which has a great film scene, and started working as a production assistant on all kinds of different projects and things that were going on there. And it was really just getting into all of that and seeing it from so many different angles that really just inspired me to keep going, and just to always continue it as a career path and make it something that I just really love to do.
Was there any aspect of that that was kind of surprising to you, once you actually got on set, that maybe you didn't expect?
Oh yeah, I mean there's lots of different things. One is I knew it was hard work because I'd done it myself. Obviously I described kind of what that looked like, but it was just how long the days were and how much time went into it for such little amount of things. When I would make films, even in college, I didn't do 100 takes of things, or I didn't, adjust the lighting if I thought it was off. It's you have your script, you have a pretty good idea of what you want, you go and get it, and then you move on to the next thing. And I had never seen it at the level where, one, so many people were involved, down to the details of people just looking at cords and making sure people aren't going to trip and fall. Those types of things where it's just the equipment takes a day to bring in and set up. So that sort of large industrial side of things was obviously something that I had seen in behind the scenes documentaries and photos and stuff, but had never experienced. Yeah. And that was really the incredible thing. There was, 15 people in a department that just coordinated travel. The stars are flying in and the extras are driving from here to there, and we need to send a car to Albuquerque to pick up so-and-so who's going to get here at this time, and then we need to book their flight to get them out to this whatever at that, and all of that kind of stuff was just shocking. And then the greens department, there was a department that was just dedicated to make, the set design, the set decoration, not set design, but the set decoration. And that's it was own department within the art department. And so seeing the large industrial Hollywood size movie making was just kind of mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, I would almost think it would be like Hollywood magic. Like, this is what
Yeah,
happens.
yeah, absolutely. And there's absolutely no magic to it whatsoever.
Yeah.
It is extremely hard work
Yeah,
and
lots of
lots of
details.
people and that kind of thing. And I think that's really what it was, is like seeing how much it wasn't just a beautiful creative endeavor all the time. That there was a lot of, like, there was one time I had to run to the FedEx before it closed to take film canisters so we could look at dailies, to get them processed by the film processor in time to get them back. And FedEx had been closed for 15 minutes. And so I got there, and when you're a PA, you're the lowest person on the ladder. And sometimes you work for really nice people who are forgiving, and other times you work for people who are like, you get this done, period. And I had happened to have been working for someone who was like, you get this done, period. And they were like, you have to get this sent off, period. And so I got there and it was closed, and I was just like, I'm gonna get fired, even though it's not my fault.
Right.
And so I'm like banging on the door, just hoping, and sure, someone peeks out and is like, and they walk over and open the door, and I was like, you just saved my job.
Yeah,
I need
like,
to send
take
this.
please.
Yeah. And so, yeah, so it's, it's just a lot of hard work, and that I think is something that was really revelatory to me and shocking to kind of see for the first time at that level.
Yeah. So let's talk about the rewards. I want to hear about some of the projects that you've done.
Sure. So, I worked on a bunch of different stuff then. One of the films that I worked on in Santa Fe actually never got made, and that's an interesting story too, because as much as we think about, the mechanizations of working on films and how awesome it is when something is really successful, there's a lot of times films disappear or don't get made or whatever. And that was a big film. And I don't want to mention any names or studios or anything like that, but that was a film that had two really big stars. It was a great script. I think that script, every once in a while I see it being greenlit again, like someone bought the rights for the script and are going to make it again. But we got within, on this particular project, we got within a week to shooting, and then the studio pulled the plug and was like, it's too much money now, and we're going to get out of this thing before we actually go any further.
They're already invested.
Yeah,
That's
they've already spent millions of dollars,
Yeah.
but then they're like, you know what, we don't want to spend millions more, because someone in the director had asked for a little bit of a budget increase, and someone in an accounting department said, that's the make or break point to either not make any money or to pin, and they just pulled the plug. And so it was just like, you're fired. And everyone goes on to the next job. So those types of things were really fascinating. I mean, the rewards for me have been more in the personal projects that I have produced and directed and seen all the way through to completion. And there's nothing like finishing a film. Like when a film is done, whether it's documentary, which I primarily work in documentary now and have for the last 15 years. My fiction filmmaking career was very short-lived, and one of the reasons why was because how much time and effort and money goes into just trying to get the amount of people you need to do it right. Acting is a very, very difficult craft that not many people are actually qualified to do or to do well, and the amount of money you have to pay for that quality is very, very difficult to attain. So I was spending so much of my time writing scripts, talking to people, how do I get money for this, trying to get meetings with studios or producers and work my way up like that. And I spent a few years not making anything and just trying to get things made and working on other projects, like shooting different videos for different things. Or I had my own production company at the time, so I was shooting videos for the United Way of New Mexico and the state troopers and all these things, just trying to get by. And at the meantime, still trying to get my projects off the ground. And it was just like, I spent 2 years and can't get this made, but I could grab my camera and go make a documentary right now, and there's no one that could stop me. It's me and my talent and that story that I need to go and capture. And who's a better actor than the person actually living it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I really fell in love with nonfiction filmmaking and have done that ever since about 2007 or so. And so anyways, it's those projects that I really feel great about and feel accomplished whenever we get those done. And whether that's on the producing side or the directing side or whatever that looks like, There's nothing like sitting in an audience for the first time with a bunch of people, some you know, some you don't, and you're going to watch one of your movies. There's like this anxiety and this excitement and this energy that just can't, it's like a drug. And that's really why it's such a hard process. There's a saying, I love to have directed, but I don't love to direct, because directing any project can kill you, you know, it can really wear you down and beat you up and make you never want to work again. But when you're on the other side of it and it's done and you're sitting there watching it with an audience, there's no better feeling in the world. And so it's one of those things where that's the biggest reward, is watching your work for the first time with an audience in a silent theater, and hopefully, you know, they like it. But that's really the biggest reward in filmmaking.
Is it just you're having to think about the vision of the whole thing and then all of the tiny little details with it, or what is the...
Yeah, and that's, you know, that's one of the misconceptions about film, is that it really, every project is different, and every role, you know, I described a big Hollywood film. In that film, the directors did very little but watch the actors and maybe talk to the director of photography about the different setups. But they had planned all of that so far in advance that they just like knew what the other one was thinking and knew where the next setup would be. And they might talk about lens choice or something like that, but the directors literally just watched the actors. And that's Hollywood. That's like the old Hollywood system, that's how it was, and that's still how it continues to be on giant budget films, is you're just watching the performances. But then I've worked on smaller films where, you know, directors are setting up their cameras and putting up lights and talking to, you know, organizing things. And so like that idea of like what roles you play on each specific film changes drastically with budget, with project, with fiction or nonfiction, et cetera. And so when I direct documentaries, I mostly do everything to a certain extent. I'm researching and developing the story. One thing in documentary that's really difficult is the access that you need to tell a story right. You know, you can set up an interview, have someone arrive for the first time, meet them for the first time, turn on the camera and talk to them. But the amount of personal depth they're going to give you is very, very shallow.
Right.
So if you want deep access, you've taken my class, so you've heard all this stuff before.
Yeah.
But if you
I have a little bit of insight.
But if you want deep access into somebody's actual story and want them to share that with you, it takes time to build up that rapport and to build up that trust for them to actually do that. And so like right now, I've been working on this project that feels endless, but I'm about 8 years into it, that hopefully is finally done. And there's, you know, we could have been done sooner, but there's just some things that have come up with it. But it's like the good stuff didn't even come until like year 2, because I was trying to tell people's lives, you know, their life stories. And it's like, who wants to do that to a stranger? Like, especially in today's day and age. I remember when I was a kid, if a television camera showed up, everyone would want to jump in front of it and wave their arms and be like, I'm going to be on TV. This is the greatest thing ever. And now the minute we see anyone point a camera at us, we go, oh my God, I don't want to be on anyone's, you know, keep me out of it.
Yeah, someone can be sitting here talking to me just like we are now, but once we say, okay, we're rolling, there's just something about it. Yeah, it's like the lights come on and they're like, you know, understandably, because they're not used to it.
Yes.
And it's like, it is an art sometimes.
Yeah.
And even the people that are used to doing it, sometimes they, you know,
that's right. Blank. Yeah, and the skills and the ability to interview people and get them to open up, et cetera, et cetera. So like when I'm directing, there's just a lot of that first time span where I'm just trying to connect with the people who are going to that I'm trying to tell their story or follow around or whatever that's like. And so so there's that aspect to it, and then there's the shoot, the actual shoot. You know, we will do things like this where it's just an interview, and that's you have a camera person with you or 2 or 3 depending on what you're doing and what your budget is, and then you're just talking to people. And that's one of my favorite things, is just to talk to people and to listen to people and to get people to open up. And you know, the best way to be a good documentary filmmaker, probably any filmmaker, but my expertise in documentary filmmaking is to be curious and to go where a conversation leads you or a shot leads you or whatever. And so that's my favorite part of documentary filmmaking, is sort of being on the set, talking to people. And then of course, after you've collected everything and then you go to the post-production process, I actually hate that part.
Really?
I hate, especially with nonfiction, because you know, you're going to make a 90-minute film. that you've been filming for 8 years, you can imagine how much footage you're having to go through, and the organizational skills that you have to have, and all of those types of things to sit down, have that all organized, go through it all, find out what works, what doesn't. Even when you're editing a film, you see the same thing so many times that sometimes you know how, I forget, there's a scientific term for it, but when a word loses its meaning, like you might say the so many times that the no longer has meaning, and you're just like, what is that sound I'm making? Yeah. Editing can be the exact same thing, to where you're like, I don't even know what I'm looking at anymore. And that wall is one that's really hard to get through. And so one of the things that works for me, and I know works for many other filmmakers, is you have like a handful of trusted colleagues that you truly believe in and know that they know where you're at with your work, and you respect each other and you value each other's input, and you just turn it over to them and say, watch this and tell me if I got anything that's good.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to be able to take that criticism of like, no, this is awful, start over, which no one really says that, but they, no, this works, that doesn't work, change this, change that. And you have to be willing and have the understanding and the trust with other colleagues. And that's one of the beautiful things about filmmaking, is that collaborative spirit that you have to be in to bring something to life is one of the hardest things, because you have to be able to work with other people, and in the creative world sometimes that's not the easiest thing. But then you also have to be willing to hear that input and make the best product that you can make, tell the best story that you can tell, and you have to be willing to die 1,000 deaths, kill all your darlings, to really get it to where it needs to be successful. And so once again, that reward of sitting with those people and saying, we accomplished this, even if you're the director, is another one of the most beautiful things about filmmaking, is feeling like you did it because of the work of everyone else, including yourself.
Yeah. So how could someone, they're interested maybe in filmmaking, with it being a collaborative effort? Can you talk about the Lubbock community filmmaking?
Absolutely. A lot of them are in this room right now.
Yeah, they're all our friends that are helping us with this.
And one of my favorite people to collaborate with is directing this right now, Shane Nassiri. But so, one of the elements to that is to, in Lubbock, especially our community, is to just get connected. A lot of people, a lot of things run through the university here in Lubbock. We're a university town, and that's well known, Texas Tech. And getting connected into that community and the professors there and those types of things, they know everybody and they can point you in the right direction and things of that nature. I would love to see, and I know that Shane, it's something he's wanted to work on and something we need to work on, but we need to have a more collaborative place to where people can share their skills and gifts. And I know we're working on that, and that's coming in a lot of different ways, which I know we'll talk about in a minute. But a lot of it is just going to Alamo Drafthouse and watching movies and coming out and meeting the people who are talking about it in the bar after, in the lobby or whatever. Like, we have a great film community, a deep film loving and filmmaking community, but it's that connective tissue that really sometimes is the barrier to getting together and doing stuff. But I know that all of the filmmakers in Lubbock that I know, which is a lot of them, that's kind of the church. That's the place where the community gets together, is at the movies. And then also, like I was saying earlier, Texas Tech is a great connective tissue too, because they know everyone and everyone knows them. And so if someone's looking to get connected, that's a great place to get turned into, is the College of Media and Communication, Dr. Rob Peasley and Jared Foster and the folks there. There's a lot of filmmaking initiatives out of that. And then where we're shooting now, Luca, the Flatland Film Festival is run by Luca, and that's another great place where you'll meet a lot of great filmmakers. I moved to Lubbock in 2011, and this is kind of my story, the story I just described. And working for Texas Tech at Texas Tech Public Media, got to know Dr. Rob Peasley, and he put me on the committee, the selection committee for the film festival here. And it was at that point really that I met a ton of the filmmakers in Lubbock, not only because I was watching their movies and we were curating a bunch of these short films to put up there, but everyone comes to the film festival and is involved in it and all that type of stuff. And so it just, from there, you just meet everyone and start to work together and figure out what other people are working on or what they may want to work on. And then you just kind of build that community. And then it's really just like someone's got to get a script and someone's got to get everyone together, and then we go. a short film we just finished that Shane directed is called Farce, which is premiering at the Lone Star Film Festival.
I've heard about it.
Yeah, and it's fantastic. And that was Shane just basically being like, I got a script, guys, let's go, guys and girls, let's go. And we did it. And that's the beauty about Lubbock filmmaking, is it was just like, whatever, let's do this together. You know, you got an idea, we got the talent and the skill set, and we just all dove in and got it done. And so that kind of stuff is really what's beautiful about our filmmaking community, is everyone's willingness. Because it's, like I said, I just described for a long time how difficult it is to make a movie. And to get a bunch of people who are willing to do that and walk through that fire with you is proof of how great our filmmaking community really is here.
Did that maybe not surprise you, but did that impress you when you got to Lubbock? Were you expecting that?
No, not really. You know, like I said, I grew up in New Mexico. I spent time in Lubbock growing up, and mostly to play in basketball tournaments. But I didn't really know Lubbock well until I came here, and it really was one of the most. It's why I'm still here. It was one of the most remarkable things to see just how amazing our arts culture is here. I had no idea, about First Friday Art Trail, about the filmmaking community. The music scene was one of the first things. When I came to Texas Tech Public Media, one of the first tasks I had was like, hey, we need new content. We had not really made any new shows or content or documentaries in the last 20 years of our history at Channel 5. And as the content director at that time, I was asked to figure it out. And so I spent a lot of time just doing research on Lubbock and everything else. And of course, I knew it was the hometown of Buddy Holly, but it kind of it begins and ends there. Natalie Maines, those types of things, the big names. But it was really when I dug in that I realized, the beauty of all of the people making music all the time, and how many Flatland Cavalry and Terry Allen, if you want to go back in time a little bit, and Josh Abbott cut his teeth here. And you start to hear all the names that it's like, Lubbock, it's not some past, it's a present that's happening now around us every day, that the next star is going to be coming out, and you may have watched them at the Blue Light last weekend,
Exactly.
And it's like when that starts to happen, when that happened for me, it was just like, oh wow, Lubbock is a place not of a few isolated incidents of people doing great work, but of people doing great work now who will be future stars in X amount of years. And so that was the real beauty to it, and really where we started our show 24 Frames, which was about arts and culture in Lubbock, and telling those stories. As a documentary filmmaker, it just opened me up to how amazing the history, the present, and the future is here in Lubbock in our arts community.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually just had Joy Harris here just before you got here. She's phenomenal. We were talking about the music-friendly designation. You kind of just alluded to it. Stacy Keith with the Lubbock Cultural Arts Foundation is working on a film-friendly designation along with the city of Lubbock and our film-friendly community. Do you want to talk to what that will mean?
Yeah, so that film-friendly designation basically just acknowledges our city as a great place to make movies. And it is a great place to make movies, and there's been movies shot here over the years. One thing that's funny about Lubbock is you always hear did you hear Ryan Gosling's? Someone saw
the Twilight guy.
Yeah, Robert Pattinson. Yeah. He's here for something. They're shooting something somewhere. You hear those stories or whatever, urban legends maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I never. Maybe I would make a trip down to a hotel to look for Ryan Gosling, but I don't know about anyone else. Anyway, jokes aside, that basically just acknowledges that we're a great place to make movies. And then not only that, but it puts together lists and profiles of places to shoot. Because one of the biggest things, there's a scouting department. There was a film that I worked early on where I got to meet the film scout early on, and we were shooting in New Mexico. He was from Texas. I had grown up in the area, so he took me along. Even though I was a production assistant, he brought me along on the scout, and he was like, take me to trees, take me to this, take me to that. And so I got a really good crash course in how location scouting works, and they basically will go out and just drive around, and this is pre-drones and Google Earth and all that stuff, but we're basically just driving around looking for locations that fit the needs of the script. The director and the producer have said, we need this, we need that, we need a scene here that looks like that. And what the film friendly designation does is it basically helps us build a collective of locations, of places where people can shoot, of people might come to Lubbock. There's times where we've gotten calls at Texas Tech Public Media where someone says, we need a cinematographer for a 2-day shoot that's shooting on this type of camera. And so it basically helps us organize all that information into one friendly place that filmmakers, producers, Hollywood studios can look at and go, oh, here's a bunch of amazing locations on this website, and there's a list of all of these filmmakers or people who can do this work that we're going to need when we're shooting, and there's a desert location and this and that and the other. And so it basically signifies to the larger filmmaking world that Lubbock is a wonderful place to bring your productions and make movies from.
Gotcha.
And so that really is the thing that that it means, is just that it shows us as a world-class place to bring your film production.
So it kind of solidifies it by providing basically like a resource guide or like a resume for the city of
That's
Lubbock.
right. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's like putting out our resume and getting it accepted that you can come here and get everything you need to make your production. And so Stacy's done an incredible job working on that with other people at the city to try to make that happen. And I know it's sort of a process that's still moving along, but it means so much, because that's the type of thing that saves producers and Hollywood and studios tons of money. If you have to send out a location scout or whatever that looks like to just comb the area to try to find these places, that costs you time and money and effort, etc. To where when you collect all that information for a studio or a producer, it just saves them the time and the ability. It also, another thing that happens out of that is you go to the places that you know are great locations to shoot, and you work with the landowners or the property owners, and you educate them about what it means to have a film production in that property or at their house or at their, on their land. And so it works both ways, and it ultimately just saves the studios and the filmmakers money and gives Lubbock as a wonderful location to make films. But like an example of that would be like if a location scout came and found the perfect spot to shoot their film, they would have to first figure out who owns the land or the property, right? Then they have to track that person down, which is even with the internet, it's difficult to track people down, and talk to them and say, hey, I'm a producer and I want to make a movie here.
Well, that initial conversation, I'm sure,
is real awkward. It's like,
yeah.
am I being scammed? What is this? What do you need from me? What are you asking me for? What do I get? How do I know you're ripping me off? So what this does is it allows us as a city and as a group of filmmakers to build this community up and to bring that landowner in and say, hey, we're pretty sure that you have a great spot that people are going to be interested in shooting. Let us educate you on what some of these contracts look like that Hollywood's going to bring to you and ask you to sign. Let us educate you on what you need to be prepared for and what this looks like and what you can expect to happen. And that just helps bring our community into the filmmaking process early on and educate them about what it's going to look like to be involved in this, and that makes everybody happy. And it only leads to more projects being done here, which brings in money and tourism and those types of things. And so it really is, while it may seem insignificant to be like, oh, it's just film-friendly designation, it means the world in so many ways to our community to help solidify our filmmaking community, but also to help bring films into Lubbock to be filmed here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like you just mentioned, it's not even just the advantage for the arts, but I mean, there's great economic benefit as well.
Yeah.
To be
Without a doubt. And you look at, New Mexico has done a great job with this, and they're one of the early leaders in that. But Netflix didn't build a studio in Santa Monica, they built a studio in Albuquerque. But that means that when those productions need a certain location, if we get that film-friendly designation, once we get it, and they can see that we have a location that actually fits what they need better than they can get where they're at, they'll come here. It's an easy location to get to from there. So we can actually benefit from what other states have done around us to bring people here just based on this, and having these resources and letting people see it and sending it out to the studios and letting them know that we're a place to make movies. It's just a great opportunity for us.
Yeah. Do you have any other kind of looking forward what you think this might mean for the Lubbock community?
It's hard to say. I think first and foremost, it's going to be getting through this process, and we're going to get that designation, which is going to be great, and then working through the educational process and putting together the assets that we need, putting together a video that shows the locations, having high resolution photos, like basically just bringing it all together and sort of building that resource that we then can go out and show to studios and filmmakers and make sure that we are known and we are seen and we are visible as a place to make movies. But just like you said, the economic value to it, you never know. Marfa, which I love Marfa, Texas, but it's been living off of not only the great, all the art stuff, but as well as like the production of Giant being shot there with James Dean. That's still, you go into any of the hotels or anywhere down there and you're going to see posters or paraphernalia from the making of the film Giant. So all it takes is one really great movie to be made in your place, and people are going to come there for years and years and years just to follow that. I keep talking about New Mexico, but like Breaking Bad, there's entire tours of places in Albuquerque. My aunt lived down the street from one of them, and it's the most just sort of bland suburb street you could ever think of, and people drive by it all the time because it's Walter White Street, right? And so those types of things are really interesting and can come out of stuff like this. To get, first you got to build it and then they'll come, but once that happens, you never know what can come from that.
Yeah, definitely. So looking forward, I'm curious to know, you kind of teased it a little bit, but what's coming for you? What are some things that you can share with us?
The film I was talking about, it's a Lubbock film. It's about Terry Allen. So Terry Allen is one of the pioneers of red dirt country, or whatever you want to call it, alternative country, those types of things. And he's from Lubbock. He grew up here, met his wife Jo Harvey here, and he's a musician and artist. And he's been so influential to so many other big-time musicians. And there's a saying, and you mostly hear it in comedy, a comedian's comedian, right? Someone who, any comedian will know who they are, but they're not like famous on their own. They're like very appreciated by their industry, but they're not known to the wider public. And Terry is a Renaissance man and has done so many great work and worked with so many great people. Like if you asked Willie Nelson, what do you think of Terry Allen? He'd say, I love Terry Allen.
Yeah.
Lyle Lovett loves Terry Allen.
Yeah.
But his name to the wider population, it's just not there, but it should be. And so I've been working on this film about the life and art and music of Terry Allen and his wife Jo Harvey Allen. And so that film hopefully will be out very, very early in 2021. And that's really kind of what I've been focused on and working on for a long time, and finally have had the time to sit down during this era and really focus on finishing that film out. And so we're almost there, and that's a really exciting project. And then, really we're focused at Texas Tech Public Media specifically. We're very focused on what public media looks like in today's day and age, and how we tell the stories of our communities and our region and the people here in ways that impact not only just the visibility of putting a megaphone and amplifying these stories, but how we can connect to audiences through the way they're consuming content now. We think of public media as PBS and NPR and broadcast signals, but we're really focused on changing the model to how people think of the content they get from public media. We invented subscription services. The member model, which is what PBS and NPR do, is essentially a subscription like Netflix, right? You pay $12 a month and you get access to this stuff. We've been doing that for 60 years, but it's the messaging and it's the marketing and it's the model that you have to build to really draw in audiences today. So we're working on multi-platform, multimedia projects, documentary projects that span across every type of storytelling we have: podcasting, broadcast radio, broadcast television, digital first, through PBS Passport, and really figuring out how you build audience, create content, and distribute content in a way that impacts your community, makes a difference in your community, but reaches audiences and how they consume content today.
Yeah, I think it'll be really cool to see as you guys kind of move into that, because content really does drive so much. Like you said, marketing is obviously incredibly important, but you know, a lot of the content, like for instance, that Netflix has put out, people have really been surprised, you know, initially that it was Netflix.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we grew up in an era where people were loyal to networks. I watch NBC. I watched must-see TV on NBC Thursday, which was Seinfeld, which was Friends, which was those shows. My kids who watch Friends now, they don't know where it aired. They don't know who made it.
They're like, it's on Netflix.
Yeah,
or Netflix
exactly.
took it off.
Yes, exactly. And it's like, so that type of brand loyalty, which has gone from I'm loyal to this network, is now I'm loyal to this brand. So how do we as public media brand ourselves in a way that people want to be loyal to us? And that's what we're trying to figure out, and that's where we're headed.
That's so exciting. Well, I know here in West Texas, you guys are going to figure it out. It'll be good to see.
I think so. And we acquired the El Paso station, so now we're a regional public media hub that we broadcast and put out content and stories that go from all the way from here in Lubbock all the way to the border in El Paso. And so that's been a real exciting thing too, is to think about how we serve a region and not just a specific community.
It really widens the breadth of the stories that you can tell.
Yeah, El Paso is an amazing city, and it sits at the crossroads of so many national topics: immigration, trade, all the things that our people are thinking about, and what it looks like, what our country continues to look like into the future. A lot of those stories are right there at the forefront and happening in El Paso. And so that's been an interesting thing, to bring those stories to what we do, and to also tell how those stories affect us here, right? How the stories in El Paso affect the communities in Lubbock, and vice versa. What's going on in our more agriculture and focused and those types of things here in the Panhandle in West Texas, and how they affect the folks in El Paso. So that's been a real fascinating dynamic as a storyteller, to try to understand and parse out the ways that our communities are connected, even though they're not connected geographically.
Yeah, there's nothing better than being a storyteller. It's definitely the greatest privilege, for sure.
That's right. I love it.
Well, thanks so much, Paul. I appreciate you being here with us and kind of telling us all about filmmaking. It's kind of this beautiful mystery to some. Probably not to you, but to some it is, obviously. But anyways.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. For more on our film-friendly designation that we'll get here hopefully soon in Lubbock, Texas, follow lubbockculturalarts.org.